Adam, go ahead and introduce yourself and take it away.
Okay, great. Thank you, Eric. Hi, everybody. I'm Adam, Adam Preble. I'm the creator and lead developer of Railroader. And Railroader is a railroad operations simulator PC game. I read a laundry list of things here. It's a PC game that launched on Steam in early access back in December. I'm sharing it with the OPSIG this evening because in a lot of ways, just a spoiler here. It's basically a virtual operating session, but maybe taken a little bit beyond that, not in outlandish ways, hopefully in only the best ways. And it's a single player game as well as multiplayer. And tonight it'll just be single player, just me playing for hopefully y'all's enjoyment and rambling about aspects of the game. I did want to give a little bit of background on the game, and I also wanted to say, although I introduced myself as the lead developer and creator and such, I've been helped by a lot of people. A lot of people have helped along the way in research, testing, building the models that you see. All of the rolling stock were made by our talented team. So I'm very thankful for their help, and that without them, this would not be where it's at today. A tiny bit of background on me: I'm a developer. I'm not candidly, I'm not a railroader. Maybe I'm a little too conscious of that, but I'm fortunate again to have the assistance of people who are much smarter than I am in those kinds of areas and have helped keep me honest. So I've built iPhone apps for a long time. I made a couple small games for the iPhone a long time ago, and this is my first serious game, and it's been quite a project. So a little bit more background. About 10 years ago, I started to get interest in trains after a very long time of non-interest. And model railroading came along as kind of a natural part of that. And I started hearing about operations, and I started wondering, this sounds interesting. What do you mean the signal lights don't tell you or don't go right next to the switch and tell you which way the switch is pointing or something like that? So I've come a long way in those 10 years, but the more curious I got about ops, and I started attending ops sessions in my local area, and through which I learned a whole lot. Um, I started wanting to play games maybe that let me work these operations muscles that were still forming, and maybe in some ways they're still forming. But and what I found was that the games that were out there just didn't quite scratch the itch for me. A lot of them were very linear. Like you would start the game and you would do a scenario. So you run from A to B, and then you get a score and it's over. Or if you mess up, you just lost 45 minutes of your life. Try it again. That drove me insane, and thankfully it did, because Railroad is the product of that. But there are other things too, you may know some of them are not very accessible, some of them are very deep, and that's great, but that wasn't what I was looking for. I wanted something that had texture, but it didn't. I had like a new family, and you don't have like an abundance of time to sink into these things. And also, I wanted to I thought it would be cool if there was something where the traffic, in terms of the cars coming onto the railroad and whatnot, if the traffic were just generated by the game and I didn't have to, uh, do a very manual kind of staging process to set up a local. What if I wanted to just pop into the game for 30 minutes and switch some cars, and I didn't have to do a bunch of setup to make that possible? I thought that would be cool. Um, and another element is I was fortunate to be playing with some friends at the time, multiplayer games, and some of the games have like these amazing real life routes. But the thing about real life routes is that they're very long, and some of the best of the game is like when you see your friend go by on an engine, or um, you're running a local and you can get there to the location, switch it and back, and it doesn't take you like all of 5 hours to do that. So I was like running into these things where games just weren't, as I said, scratching the itch. So I did what any headstrong programmer does, and I decided to make my own game, and it started out as a just like hobby thing, like let's see how, if I can have fun with this. And I've tried to stay true to, I think, done a good job of, not to pat myself on the back, of staying true to those kinds of things that I wanted to create um, in the experience. Um, so I'll try to make this part quick here. So kind of conversely to my list of things before, um, Railroader does a few things in particular that I think make it special, if I can say. So Railroader highly emphasizes player agency. It is a fixed map that you don't lay the track yourself. You don't set up the roadbed and whatnot. But within those constraints, you have a lot of freedom to decide which customers you want to serve, how big you want your railroad to be, what power you want to run. Um, and and just to give you an idea of that, there are a lot of really cool games that run kind of like a timeline experience where you start out at 1850 or something, and time marches forward, and power becomes obsolete and new things become available. Railroader is a little bit more like an obsession might be, where the layout owner has chosen such and such power to run. So you, as the game player, decide the kind of railroad you want. If you want little, tiny 10-wheelers running around, you can do that. If you want Berkshires and Jeeps, you can do that too. So we try to like kind of give you latitude to make the game the kind of environment that you want. Um, and then one other key thing that I want to note is that um, I called it a railroad operations simulator, and I've chosen those words very carefully to not be train simulator, because I think if you come into the game expecting that this is a simulation of a locomotive, I don't think, I think that's not the way to come into the game, because it's not intended to be that way. So, for example, there is no like startup sequence on the Jeep. The Jeep is always on, it's running, and it's fine. Um, where we think the more or where the gameplay is that we're really more interested in simulating is that running the railroad part of things. Like, so I have cars that come onto my railroad at the interchange for my customers that I've chosen. How am I going to get those cars to their customers? And there are, any number of ways that you could do that. So that's kind of where we put the emphasis on the gameplay, um, and and a little bit less on like the technical, like tiny bits of nitty gritty. So this is the game here behind my head, and I've kind of this is kind of a setup map of, like, you could imagine that this is a save game that's maybe been going on for a few days, and some progress has been made. But it's still kind of early game. Um, so we're looking at the map. I'm gonna switch to the overhead camera here, and this is kind of like maybe one of the first things we see. And this is an area called East Whittier. The map, by the way, is based on the Southern Railway's Murphy Branch in Western North Carolina. And I chose that because I wanted something that was a short line type operation. So not too busy. It's manageable by regular humans. And you don't necessarily need a huge crowd, in order to successfully run it. So you could run this as a single player and still have a good time. But you could also, have a 10-player multiplayer game and still manage to find ways to be in each other's way in the best way possible. So we're in East Whittier, like I mentioned. The game has two modes. It has a company mode and a sandbox mode. In company mode, you're concerned with money. In sandbox mode, you're not. In sandbox mode, you can put down whatever you want, wherever you want. You can turn on and off sections of the map. But in company mode, it's more of a setup where you start out with a rather limited section of the map, and then if you choose to, you can expand further. So I'm going to bring up the map window here. and this starts out showing me where I'm at. So here's my track here at East Whittier. And if I expand a bit more, we have the town of Whittier, and then we have just off to the west, Ella there. So this is like if you were to go into the game right now and start a new company game, what I've got shown here, that is the track you would have available. So just over, I think, 3 miles of track. And that's kind of like a good, like to reuse the term sandbox, where you can kind of get your feet wet and understand how the game works and and then grow from there. So um, so that's a kind of a taste of the map. And just so you know, um, when you fully expand the map, if you choose to, that's a 54-mile long main line. And for the real life Murphy Branch, it spans from Silva in the east up to Andrews in the west. Okay.
Adam,
Yeah,
can I share the PDF map real quick?
sure thing. Yeah.
So I'm not sure if this is quite official or not, but
Oh,
um,
yeah. That
this
was made
is,
by, oh, go ahead.
oh, is this made by somebody?
Yeah, I don't know the name of the person off the top of my head, but that was made by somebody
Says
in our community.
says Duclaw. But so what Adam is showing is this little dashed line here out to about here. So this is the first part. However, you can like the end of this is milepost 98. The other end is milepost 45. So it's 53 miles of track uh, with a whole bunch of things along the way. So
Yeah.
it's I'm just about ready to get this page, and then I'm really going to go nuts. So
Yeah,
all
pace
right,
yourself.
yeah, yeah, exactly. Go ahead. Okay, go ahead.
Okay. Um, so I'm going to try to real quickly, like part of my goal here is for you to you listening at home to understand like what's the idea of this game and what is it like to play it, so you can judge for yourself if it's interesting to you or maybe it spurs ideas that apply to model railroading, because I know it has for me as well. Um, um, okay, so real quickly, let's get some basics out of the way so you
You want
understand
to
what's happening.
reshare? Go ahead and reshare.
Oh, did it get dropped? Okay.
Yeah, I stole it and gave it back to you.
Uh, how's that?
Perfect.
We're back. Okay. So we have two cameras in the game. There's an overhead camera, which I'm using right now, sweeping through the trees there. The overhead camera just gives you a kind of an eagle or sky view, or whatever, of what's happening. And that's rather handy for probably obvious reasons. And down here on the ground, that's my character. And I can jump to my character view and I could just hit the 1 and the 2 button. The 1 button is first person, 2 is for this overhead view. And what's really kind of cool about this is if you want to play in a way that's simulating that, the conductor has to get down and the conductor's on the ground and they're riding the cut and so forth, you can do that with your player. And meanwhile, you can kind of be in another role, maybe the engineer role, using the overhead camera. You can also use this to do things like being effectively controlling multiple trains at the same time and jumping between them. So it kind of helps you be multiple places at one time. Um, so let's go ahead and jump into the cab here. And so the way I'm going to do that is just walk straight into the ladder and climb up, and then I'll hop here. And now my character is seated in the engine. And I can open up get some airflow in here. Um, so we have some basic locomotive controls. A lot of these valves are not functional. They're just, aesthetically there. But what's important or we do have the important things, which are the throttle, the independent brake, and the train brake, and the reverser. Oh, and the whistle. That's really important too. So, so if we wanted to get our train rolling, I can just, click and drag on the 3D controls, give it a little bit of throttle, and release the independent, and and I can get rolling here. I can look out the window. So it's kind of your option whether if you want to have like a really immersive experience in the cab, or, if you prefer to be outside the cab. And if you want to do that, you can do what's called selecting the locomotive. The way you do that is you right click on it. I've already selected it. Right click on the locomotive, select it, and then this HUD control appears. And the HUD gives you all those same controls, just in this 2D, always present form. So I can set the reverser, full reverse, and then give it some throttle to get going. And yeah, all right. So we hooked onto our train, and I'm going to probably use the overhead view for most of the time, just so that it's kind of easier to keep track of what's happening. Um, so so now you have kind of a basic idea, hopefully, of how you operate the train. So we have the train brake, independent brake, throttle, reverser, um, and um, so that's how we move our train around. Sorry, I'm refinding my place. Um, Now the basic, well, let me speak about this first. So we can go in between the cars here, and this is kind of another key element that's simulated, which is the air line, the brake line in the train. So right now I just hooked onto this cut of cars, and I want to connect the glad hands and open the angle cocks. So I can do that by just clicking on the glad hands and then open one angle cock and kind of get to where I can see the other one over there. And they're both open now. And now air is flowing into the brake line and charging up the brakes, and that's great. Um, you can do it that way if you choose. I'm going to reset this back. You can also do it a faster way, which is to shift click on the glad hands. And note that when I do this, the angle cocks move and open automatically. So I just kind of want to mention that as like you can kind of choose the level that you want to play at, because, when you're doing a lot of switching, it becomes rather cumbersome to uh, connect, disconnect, set all those ankle cocks. So one other thing I want to call out here is that you may notice on the HUD display, I've got TS600, that's my engine. And below it, I have this brake display. This is an idea that I guess you'd say I stole it from Run 8. Like Run 8 has this great train brake debug display, and it tells you what the status of the train brake is. And as somebody who has played train games and had the problem of like, why is the train not moving? I felt like this was important to show here to kind of give you a clue. So you see I've got two cars here, two little purple rectangles. That means that the handbrake is set. So I can release those using that menu, or I can run over here, climb up the ladder, and click on the brake. So that's one off, and then the other one I'll release here. Okay, so we've got our train. Our train's kind of situated here, ready to move. What I thought I would do for this demo is we're going to kind of run a part of a mixed train here. So um, let me make sure I'm not forgetting anything. So let's go ahead and get ahead. And so I'll apply the throttle. I should whistle. So we'll get moving here. By the way, if any of you are like Steam fans, we kind of have a simplified system here for the throttle and the reverser. There is no firing in the game at this time because although that would be cool, it's the kind of thing where it's like there's kind of enough to do without that. So that's how things work right now. So we just manage the throttle and the reverser. So I just picked up this cut of cars. This cut of cars were set out at the interchange by our friends, the adjoining class 1. And these are cars that I need to deliver to customers, right? Because they're all, um, you know, basically ordered by my customers. So, uh, how do I know where to put those? You might be wondering. And this is a something that a lot of us have probably encountered at people's layouts. You know, how do you how do I know where this car goes? Or I see where it goes in text, but where on earth is that? So, real quickly, there are a few ways to do that. Let me get the train stopped here. Um, so you'll notice when I hover over these cars, there's a tooltip. So this particular car, GTW 42241, is going to Appalachian Hardwood's G3A. Well, that's meaningless unless you've played the game a fair amount. So you have a few options. You can inspect the car. I'm showing you from like hardest to easiest. And if I switch over to the operations tab here and I hover over the destination, notice that in the upper left corner, it kind of goes away when my mouse moves, but um, in the upper left corner, it says 6 miles to the west is where Appalachian Hardwoods is. And I can actually click on this little location icon here, and it will jump me to that location. And if I hover over it again, it shows me, okay, this is the span of track. This is what's meant by G3A. So what I need to do to deliver this car correctly is to spot it there on that track. So I'm gonna hit 0 to jump back to my train. 0 just jumps back to your selected engine. So that's one way to do it. We have a switch list thing. I won't show you that too much, but you do have the option of adding cars that are in your train onto a switch list, and the switch list automatically checks things off as they're delivered. But the other way to do it is if I hit the tab key, I get these car tabs that show up. And these show me, you know, at a real easy glance, I'm sure practically everybody here is probably familiar with the tab on car. I hope I'm saying it right. Never know whether it's tag on car, tab on car. But anyway, this is the
I've
software.
heard it both ways. Tab
Okay,
on
good.
car or tag on car or all
Well,
sorts of different ways. So
there's a reason I'm uncertain about it then. That's good. Um, So yeah, so these tell me at a glance where these things are going, and so I know that the green cars are heading to Bryson, which is like 5 or 6 miles away to the west. These cars here, notice I'm hovering over Whittier Sawmill SO1 and 2. That those tracks over there highlight, so I know those cars need to go over there, and so forth. So the tags make it super easy to tell, you know, what am I supposed to be doing with these cars? Because I think to me, that's just like a real can be a real challenge in any kind of new railroad, essentially. Where do the things go? So let's shove back into the engine shed. We have engine sheds on the game. There's a roundhouse in Bryson as well as in Dillsboro, and the engine sheds serve the purpose of being, you know, where you would perform repairs on your train. How might or why might you need repairs, you might ask? Well, if I were not watching this couple too carefully, which is prone to happen while I'm talking, uh, you know, I might hit that coach with a fair amount of force, and if I hit it hard enough, it's going to damage it. And so, you know, that wouldn't be very good. So, um, the engine shed is where I can take care of those repairs and make my coaches nice and shiny again. So, all right, so we've hooked to the car, and I'm operating maybe a little more quickly than I might otherwise because I don't want to. I have kind of a lot of ground I want to cover. Um, so where's our person? One thing is you'll notice the person can move very quickly. Like I think I'm probably outpacing the train here, and that's just, you know, if I let go of shift, I move at a little more reasonable speed. But um, that's just kind of a
he's also Olympic level high jumper too. I'm impressed by that.
yeah, yeah. You can often fling yourself into things. Um, okay, so we managed to catch onto the train, and we can do things you should never do in real life, like hooking up the airline while rolling. At least I assume that's a poor practice. So now we're hurtling toward downtown Whittier. We've got our coach for our mixed train. Um, I'm going to do one thing real quickly here. which is that I want to get rid of a few of these cars. So pardon the rough handling while I do that. So I've got these cars for Whittier Sawmill here, and those are down the switchback here. So just for the purposes of this demo, I'd really like to drop those cars off. I'm gonna set them over here on the track. So in that case, I just shift clicked on the coupler, and that opened up the connection. The air hose pops, and we can get ahead. And then brake a bit. And I'll put my conductor here on the ground. We'll throw the switch. Shove, shove. This is one of the nice things you can do in the game. You can talk to yourself as if you're speaking to somebody.
I
All right.
appreciated the squeak on the ground throw there.
Oh yeah. So really, we just want to get these this cut of cars. And I put myself in a really tight position here. Come back a little bit more. And then I'm going to hop on here. So if I shift click here, I can just kind of an ineffective kick there because I'm already across the switch. And then how do I stop my train? I just right click and handbrake. I could also, like, scale it and find the handbrake here if I were so inclined. Okay. So let's jump ahead here. Let's put the brakes on before we roll all the way across the map. And then come on back. So I think I started alluding to this earlier, but the kind of the game loop of the game is really about cars are received at the interchange, and those are the cars that are ordered by the customers that you have set up contracts for or with. And when you set up a contract, you can determine, based on your reputation in the game, which is determined by kind of how you do at passenger operations as well as your freight deliveries. Your reputation determines what tier of contract you can get with each client. And why might you want a different tier? Well, depending on the tier level, that's what determines how many cars you get for that customer, basically. So what's nice about that is that if you have customers that, maybe it's not your favorite thing to switch that particular customer, but you would feel bad to shut them out completely, you could set it to tier 1 and that's fine. But if it's a customer you really like and you want to get a lot of cars for them, you could work toward getting tier 5 with that customer. So that's just one of the ways that you can kind of shape the experience to be what you want it to be. So here I'm passing the Y here. Behind us, there was a sawmill there. That sawmill takes log cars, and one of the best places to get those logs is from this branch that's entered from the Y here. It's just a couple miles up the hill there. So Whittier is up ahead. And at Whittier, there's a depot on the right, behind the water tower there, and then 2 industries. You might notice that there are not a lot of buildings. And I think I mentioned that Railroader's in early access. And what early access means essentially is that it's not done yet. So we're still, I think, like, the core game is very, is in great shape. But there are things about it that we're still working on, different mechanics. We're still adding, like recently we've had a number of updates for look for the crossing here. We've had a number of updates relating to wear and tear in the game, and like kind of adding um, regular wear that occurs on cars over time, and some mechanics like hot boxes, for example. That's a new one. So you can now oil the journals, which is kind of a very simple interaction, but the idea is kind of to uh, promote these simple interactions that give you a sense of like you're kind of doing preventative maintenance on your railroad. And it's always a bonus if you can avoid hot boxes because those cause quite a bit of damage to the cars and so forth, at least when you're running above a certain speed. So we've got our passenger car here. We're arriving at uh, Whittier Station. We'll try to make a nice gentle stop, even though nobody's on board. We don't have any like, I would love to, but I don't know. There's kind of some technical challenges here with doing it. I would love to have like passenger models on the platform, but those don't exist yet. So maybe someday. So real quick, like the way that passengers work is that they gather at the station, and right now I'm hovering over the agent window, which kind of gives you an idea of what's happening. I'm sorry, the agent well, tooltip gives you an idea of what's happening in the area. So we see there's 60 passengers waiting. So if I've got my the inspector window for the coach selected, I switch to the passenger tab and I say this coach is going to Ella and Bryson. When I do that, then the passengers who are waiting for those particular stops will board the train, and then when we stop at those stops, then they'll disembark. So while we're here, I'm going to do um, a quick drop so you can see like what a freight delivery looks like. So this car here, if I hover over the tag, you'll see the track highlights. So this is the Whittier House track. I've got one car for that, and these other two cars for Stenzel Manufacturing are over here, that building on the hill. And ordinarily, I probably wouldn't do it this way, but because I'm kind of hustling a bit, I'm going to throw that switch, and I'm going to spot these cars here. And then on my return trip, I can kind of duck in on this siding and get those cars and deliver them. And Stenzel Manufacturing doesn't really mind if they arrive later in the day. It's really kind of down to the day. And if you deliver things quickly, then you get a bonus fee for the delivery. So notice that the tag is now transparent orange, and you see the payment came through. So we've been paid for delivering this car to the Whittier House track. So let's go ahead and just leave that cut here. We'll set the handbrake on it, and we'll get head. So that's one of the things, like, sorry to keep harping on this, but it's like, it's one of the things I really like about the game is that, um, there are rules, but it's totally up to you, uh, how you choose to run these trains. Like, I chose to run this as a mixed train. There's nothing about the game that asks me to do that. I had another locomotive there in the shed. I could have I could have been running a passenger train separately, and so it's you just have that latitude to run things the way you want to. Okay, so our train's together. I think we can. We're full of passengers, 60 out of 60. You can buy other coaches that have higher capacity. You can buy an observation car, which, if it's correctly positioned on the rear of the train, will give you a bonus. And of course, there are other locomotives. There's like I can't believe it. There are 19 steam locomotives in the game. And we only have two diesels, though. We have a Jeep 9 and an SW1. But steam has definitely been the focus, and we hope to add more diesel in the future. Okay. So now I'm heading toward the west end of Whittier here, and it'll go back to single track there. So Ella would be our next stop. I'm gonna check the time. Wow, time flies. So um, so we're in it, we're in the train, we're running it. Um, Everything is right with the world. The speed limit on the railroad is generally 35 miles an hour. And the speed limit matters because if you go too fast, you can derail. I'm not planning on doing that for you this evening, but who knows? Uh, so you need to watch your speed. There's a section on this track between here and Ella where it drops down to 30 miles an hour. There's kind of a pretty brutal curve up there. So I could run this. I could run this train all the way to Ella and then Bryson beyond it to drop the rest of those cars. But what I'm going to do, just to demo it, is to show you that we actually have an AI. And I hate saying AI because AI is so buzzwordy in 2024. But
But an automatic engineer.
That's right.
Or a
That's right. Automatic engineer. And so I can do that by clicking the drop down here, and there's two modes. There's the road mode where you essentially set the maximum speed and the direction, and they will follow those orders to the best of their ability. So I'll do that now. I've flipped this train into AI road mode. It's going forward at 30 miles an hour max. I can bump it up to 45, but it's only going to go 35 because it knows what the speed limit is on this track here. By the way, the speed limit is shown. So here's that 30 mile an hour section up ahead of us, and it'll slow down for that. So, what's kind of cool here is that, I can ride like this if I want to. I could go back to, I could teleport onto the ground here, unwise, and attempt to board the, oh wow, I did it. Uh, board the coach and have a seat and just enjoy the ride. So, you've got some options that the AI gives you that without putting your life at risk. And I should say, there actually is no dying in this game. It's only the steam locomotives and only the equipment that suffers damage.
the observation car is particularly nice to take a ride. I like sitting in the back of that car.
Oh, cool. Yeah. Well, that's what it's there for.
I did a nice job on the interior. It looks really comfortable.
Yeah, Elijah made that model. He's done a lot of the models in the game. He's done a great job. So we're nearing Ella, and there's 60 invisible passengers on this train. Ella is just a short distance ahead. While we're riding, I wanted to mention. So you may be wondering about the freight, and I keep talking about contracts and such. We actually have 4 different types of freight traffic. There's contract, which is the kind I was talking about before, where you have a contract at a certain tier level. There's compulsory freight, which is the word that we use to describe things like team tracks and freight houses, where if you've expanded your railroad that far, you're going to get occasional cars for those team tracks and such that you need to switch, but you get paid for it, so that's good. We also have what we call railroad fuel service. So the engines do take coal and water. You do need to stay on top of that. And you do need to order coal. You can order, you can purchase hoppers, and you can send the hoppers to the interchange to order them to be filled, and then they'll be, filled and returned to you. Here we are, we're arriving in Ella. So this is just, I'll put a pin in that for a moment and watch our station stop. So I've still got it in AI, or sorry, auto engineer. And the auto engineer, because I've checked that car as stopping at Ella, it knows that this is the Ella stop, and so it's going to stop with that coach right there on the platform. And you can configure, kind of taking away from its, you can configure the duration of the station stop. I think the default is 10 minutes on we actually have a fast clock in the game just to keep things moving, even though it is 1-to-1 scale. So I can bring that down to like 2 minutes, let's say. So the AI engineer will allow time for the passengers to disembark. You can see that ticking down. And then it'll allow time for them to load, and it won't leave before that time's up. I would love to have, some sort of timetable. And for that matter, I would love to have train order signals, but we're not quite, that's kind of on the wish list at this point in time. So this is the town of Ella, and in real life, I think it was the Appalachian Railway or Railroad had a yard here, and a lot of the yard arrangements that we've done, and this is thanks to Connor, who's helped a lot with the research on here. A lot of things we've done, we've tried to, even though I did say it's based on the Murphy branch, didn't I? I think I did. Yes. That even though it's based on it, we have embellished in some ways to, just to provide more interesting gameplay. So we can jump over to see Bryson. So I did want to, oh, we're still unloading. They're so slow here at Ella. But this is one of my favorite spots to switch, even though it's got a switch back on it. It's just kind of a fun spot. So that's kind of a taste of what a fraction of a day in the life of a kind of early getting close to mid game game would be in the game. So I'm going to jump to a different one, and this is a different save of mine. And this is one I mentioned, Connor, he's our producer. This is one that he and I have been playing. And so we're going to start out here in Bryson. And Bryson is kind of inspired by, real life historical Bryson. For example, there is a Y over here, but there is a turntable, and there was not a turntable to my understanding historically. But it's that's the way it is in the game. But it's because it's fun. So we're here in Bryson. We've got a kind of maybe small for real life, but decent size for the game. Again, kind of the goal is to keep it manageable, so your head doesn't swim when you're trying to figure out what's happening in the yard. And we have a train coming in, and you can see here are our semaphores. So we do have signals in the game, and in fact, they run in two different modes. There's kind of an automatic mode that we call ABS, even though I think it's not technically ABS. And then there's a CTC mode. So I'll show more about that in a second. So this is an AI train that was routed in here by setting the switches. And I mentioned that the road mode will just kind of it'll go forever until it reaches a reason to stop. So that might be another train, that might be a switch set against it. This AI will not set switches. And then we'll see there's also another mode. So let me demo it over here while that train's coming in. Get rid of this fusee. Well, we'll leave it there. It'll demonstrate. So I've got my little mogul here. Kind of on the caboose track back here, and it's set in reverse. And so I could tell it, hey, in yard mode, it works based off of clearances. So I can tell it, I want you to go 5 cars. It's not going to go 5 cars because there's a fusee there. So the fusee is a tool that you can use to limit the AI's movement, as well as switch positions. So I can set those switches, and now it's lined. So what you can do is you can set up meets at any one of the sidings or wherever you like in the game. you could set up a meet either with a switch position or with a fusee. And that can be a good way to, well, to set up meets, because meets are handy. In the game, I think I mentioned that you expand the map. So Bryson is kind of the first unlocked stage. And then beyond that, you can expand further. So one of the things you can also unlock in the game is the CTC signals. And the way that that happens is by paying for it, and then you deliver the cars of equipment. So when you do that, and there's the road mode train coupling to that cut there, because we need to take that boxcar back to the interchange. So I'm going to walk through this door here, and here's our CTC panel. Oh, good timing there. So the looks like number 18 eastbound is coming in from the west. So I'm sure pretty much everybody here is probably pretty familiar with US&S style CTC panel. So this is ours in the game. Down here is the toggle between ABS mode and CTC mode, and you can set set the levers to set direction. There's some parts of it that are not fully simulated in the way that like, for example, in the way the real one would. The lights might, you press the code button, the lights extinguish, and they come back once once it's verified from the field. Here, it's kind of a little more rapid response, shall we say. So I'm going to set this switch to normal, and this is Bryson here where we are. Let me just pop up here to see the, so that's our AI passenger train arriving from the other direction. So I can set a signal for them out. So that switch normal, traffic direction right, and I'll set these right. So I'll give them a route all the way to Ella, and then got that. And so if we pop up here and we look out the window, we can see in the distance there's the mainline signal set to clear. So that's kind of we're just racing all over the place here. That's so that's CTC, and I think that's like a really, for me, that was like one of those it was just cool features that I really wanted to add, because I think those boards are just some of the coolest stuff. And it turns out to be rather handy when you're managing several trains moving around. Okay, I'm glancing at my notes to see what I've overlooked. So let me give a quick, let's see. I'll mention one other thing. We don't need to go too far into detail on this, but you may be wondering how the customers work. Oh, I'm sorry, I left off on. So we were talking about the four types of freight. We had contract, compulsory, railroad fuel service, and the fourth one is captive service. So for those logs that we want to take to the sawmill, those are in captive service, and we use skeleton cars that are purchased by the railroad, and you can essentially set those up to operate between A and B, and the waybills automatically flip when the car is filled with logs, and then when it's empty, they flip back to the loading side. So just kind of some different ways to set up different interactions here. Okay, I think so. Let me show y'all one more thing, and then we can do like questions or whatever we like to do. So I don't do this very often, but for the past few weeks, I've been working on this feature, which I'm kind of excited about. We've shown the automatic engineer stuff, and so we've seen the yard mode, which is where you give clearances, a number of cars, and direction, and then the road mode where you're setting speed and a direction. And this is nice. I think this has served us rather well, but this is something we've wanted to do more with for quite a while now, and so I finally have gotten to invest some time in it. So we're kind of taking things incrementally here. And so our next kind of incremental step, and this is not in the current game, it's still in development. So you're kind of seeing the uh, uh, beyond bleeding edge stuff here, and hopefully it'll behave properly because demos just love to work properly. So let's select our 602 train. So it would be really nice if we had a way to tell the automatic engineer, hey, go to this location, right? And so that's essentially what I've been working on, is a way to do that. So I've got my engineer selected here. I'm going to flip it to yard mode, and that switch is just still set against it, which ordinarily would stop it. But for the what we're kind of tentatively calling go to, and we'll probably change the name of it, but that's what it's called for now. So I'm going to open this coupler. I want to leave these cars on this yard track, and I want to put these Bryson cars, on the first yard track in. So what I can do is I can hit Control G, is what the keyboard shortcut is for now. I can click. I can set a destination, and then the automatic engineer will plan a route, and essentially it's just going to come up here. It's already set the switch, it looks like. It'll clear that switch, and then and this switch is not set for that track. So if all goes according to plan, once it clears the switch ahead of it, or once it clears this switch here, then it will set this one properly. We'll wait in suspense to see if it works. So this is one of those things that, like, for example, doing a runaround. If you run a passenger train, frequently you end up needing to do a runaround at the end of the line. And okay, so that switch is reversed. This one is also reversed, so that's good. It worked. So now it should shove back. It's going back 12 cars. So pretty good. So this is one of those things that, doing a runaround, a lot of times, like people play the game at different levels. Some people, I think, don't want to do everything at once. They want to take their time, be present with their locomotive, right? And that's great. Some other players we know like to do everything they can at once all the time. And if they can be managing several cars or 5 trains at once, so much the better. So this is one of those things where it's like, having that yard mode is handy, but without the ability to say, go, hey, go over here, it just takes a bit more time than you would like. So those cars, I made the break there at the Alarca cut, so I can set this to go here, and it should pull ahead and shove back. So that's our kind of next step in the AI and, sorry, auto engineer. And it's not out yet. It's not available anywhere except in our development branches and stuff. But this is what we're working on, and we hope to ship it before too long, because it's something we'd really like to get out there and for people to enjoy. So I think that kind of wraps up like the main part of what I wanted to cover. I'm happy to take questions or whatever we like.
Yeah, so there's several questions. I'll just kind of go backwards. George is asking, can I install it on any drive, or does it need to go on the C drive? With Steam, you can install wherever you want. I haven't seen a restriction. Is that
Yeah, there
fair to
shouldn't be
say?
any. I'm not aware of any restriction there.
Yeah.
Yeah, that should be fine.
Jerry is asking about online manuals and documents, learning how to, and I was pointing him, there's a tutorial right up there on the next to the money.
Yeah.
That's how I got going, was the step-by-step tutorial there.
Oops. Did I I feel like I haven't played this game in too long, which is
Yeah.
not true at all. But
There is a step-by-step tutorial, Jerry. And as Connor says, there's a large community who are pretty active and happy to help in the discussion area on Steam.
mhm.
They helped me figure out why it was taking me two locomotives to pull one car. That whole brake thing is kind of important
Yeah,
because I jumped through the tutorial and didn't read all the details. Let's see, system requirements. That's out on the Steam page for it. I don't know
yeah,
what it is. I've got a pretty hefty machine and it runs absolutely great on mine. So
yeah.
um,
I would scroll down on the Steam page. The the PC that I used to develop a lot of it was running like a GTX 1660, and it can run pretty well on that. You really do need like a dedicated graphics card.
yeah,
I wouldn't do like integrated graphics. You might have
oh,
tough
there it
time with
is.
that.
Whoever Connor is, Connor one of
Yeah,
your folks?
Connor.
Okay, Connor's got you covered here.
Okay,
Let's
that's
see.
what Connor does.
Al Dowman asking, so you can play the role of the dispatcher with AI/virtual trains you need to manage? Absolutely. Or
Mhm.
if you're doing multiplayer, there's if you've got enough trains, you'd probably need somebody watching the dispatch board the whole time, I would imagine. I have not played a multiplayer game yet, but
Yeah, depending on your traffic level. And we recently, so I mentioned there were two cameras. There's actually three. If you hit the three button, it takes you directly to the board. So this is a really handy way to, if you have limited number of players, you can kind of do triple duty if you like.
can you change the colors of the magnets on the board? I didn't notice that you could do that, or is that coming?
You can you can as long as you want any of these three colors. So
Oh,
the
yeah.
way the way that works is it's kind of sneaky. Um, so if you do a less than, I'm losing my mind. If you do that symbol there, then it's red. If you do the other symbol, uh,
Oh,
greater than,
okay.
and then
So
if you
all I
have
was getting was
neither,
blue ones. And I think that's
yeah,
without. So
yeah, it's a little
um,
trick there.
let's see. Brad asks, can you use the auto brake valve or just the independent? And there's both in manual mode, there's both the train brake and the independent. Is that what you're asking, Brad?
Yeah, there's
Oh, let
I
me.
think automatic's another name for train brake, right?
He's actually, if it's the Brad I'm thinking of, he can actually. Brad, if you want to unmute yourself, go ahead.
Yeah, I was asking about the automatic because you can take a week to stop with the engine brake, but if you've got the train brakes, it's a lot quicker to stop.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
you can use both, and the AI will it'll actually use the train brake pretty heavily. So
yeah, you do have both at your disposal.
Al asked, assuming Adam doesn't cover it before he finishes, are there opposing trains you need to clear up for? If you've got them running, yeah. Like I'll have a virtual passenger train running end to end, and so I basically have to get out of the way with that if I'm running a freight. Or again in the virtual or the multiplayer. Um,
Yeah,
there
that's
was a question about Express or LCL. Um, I know there's a baggage car that shows up in sandbox mode, but
we don't
I
have
haven't seen it in company mode yet.
right. We don't have any express or mail or
Okay.
LCL stuff right now. That's something
Okay.
that's kind of on our mind, but we don't have any definite plans for it.
Got it.
Um, and I did want to mention real quickly, like there isn't, um, so there isn't like and the easiest comparison for me is Run 8 because in Run 8 it kind of generates trains at the outer reaches and sends them in. There isn't anything like that here. So if you wanted, generally speaking, in company mode, it would be your own trains that you're managing, or in sandbox, you might have you could always just place a train and set it to run, in one direction. So that's something
Yeah.
that I've done to just play dispatcher against those
Yeah.
trains.
There are some clarifications on some terminology. It's a switch stand or you line a switch because you can't
Hmm.
throw the one. Throw one because they weigh several tons. Good one. Dave asked if there's a penalty for spotting a car at the wrong location. I told him there's no penalty, but you don't get paid.
Right, that's your penalty. Yeah.
Yeah. I did run into a case just earlier where I think it's Stenzel requested 4 cars and there's only room for 3. So what I did is I shoved the 3 new ones back so they got paid and put the other one out front.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it's not going to fill. So there's kind of that off spot situation has come up several times for me.
Yeah, that's something that we talked about internally a fair amount, because I think it depends on your mindset, like, in a way, because for some players we know because we've heard from them that's maddening, and some players that's okay, it's an off spot, that's fine, and no big deal. Um, uh, So yeah, that's something that we're aware of and thinking about. I don't have I feel like I should have
I'll find it in a second.
a definite answer on that, but that's the way we think
Let's see.
about it right now.
There's a question about, do future plans include designing your own route? And you might want to talk about the mods that are available for the game.
Yeah. So we don't have any definite plans. Well, we don't have any plans right now for at least that we're talking about publicly, and that's not really a winking thing. Like, we just really don't know right now. We're kind of focused on the core game and finishing it and getting as if it will ever be done, and adding scenery and such. So that's kind of where our focus is at. We would love for there to be a way to do your own track, but that's just one of those things where the scope of effort to do that is and do that the way that we'd want to do it, I think is rather daunting. So something to think about down the road. Now, the other side of that coin is that yeah, there's kind of a can I say, vibrant modding community that's sprung up, even though we don't officially support mods because we don't really have the resources to support them, and also the game's still in development, so things are bound to break, like mods especially. But there are some people, intrepid people, who have figured out how to create their own kind of track modifier in the game. So yeah, there are options if you are adventurous.
There's a question about the multiplayer setup, which I haven't done. I've just been playing it myself. It looks like you can either have an open or a closed session with a password on it.
Yep.
And then I think new people come in with different rights. I think I remember seeing that somewhere.
Yeah. So this is our kind of the control panel, if you will, for multiplayer. And you have the option of saying, like, you can allow new players, and we kind of call them employees. And if you allow them, what role will they have when they come in? So passenger doesn't let you interact with anything. You can just ride the trains. Crew is what's required to actually control the trains and open couplers and things like that, and on up. So we've tried to create a kind of textured some options there. But yeah, you do have the option of, like, having a closed thing that doesn't allow new players in if you choose to, or you can have it be wide open.
So let me see if there's any more. I think that's all the written comments, questions, and so on.
Okay.
Let's see if there's any more. What role does the train master play?
Train master is able to create crews, which are sorry, I've forgotten some of these. Some of these are in here. And crews are used to manage switch list assignments and things like that. And I think, sorry, it's been a while since I've looked at this stuff.
Yeah, independently, if I'm playing by myself, I'll create a bunch of crews and I'll rename them saying this train is going to Alarka or this one's going to whatever. So I can easily see that when I've got the list of trains.
Mm-hmm.
But there's what the
Yeah,
rights are all for about the multiplayer thing. So
yeah, if you hit F1 in the game, that brings up the employee timetable, quote unquote, and so that's kind of like our growing help section. And so that, yeah, this describes the train master's abilities. Oh, yeah, let me mention this real quickly. Years don't pass in the game. It kind of takes place in whatever time you were imagining it. Days do, but one thing you might want to do is if you've done all your work for the day and you want to have a new day, you can just click sleep, or you can just wait 1 hour if you're waiting for something to happen, like waiting for a car to fill. And you can just advance time forward. And if you do that, the trains don't move any faster, but the industries do their stuff faster. And so you can make time progress to create more work for yourself.
good for trying to fill a passenger train too. I did that early on. It's like, okay, come on, let's get some more people. As before I extended the railroad to where I don't have time to deal with the passengers other than just, okay, send it to the other end.
And yeah.
Let's see. So is this an app / extension that adds to Steam? Steam is the place that you buy the game, Jerry. So if you go to the Steam, I think I can get a link to it here. Hold on. Let's see. So you basically install the Steam software for free, and then you can go in, find Railroader in the store and buy it. And then Steam is it's basically the engine that runs the engines.
It's kind of a launcher, like you have
Yeah,
a
yeah, that's a
library
better
of
term.
games.
Sorry. Yeah, like I'm gonna steal your screen real quick.
Sure.
So like this is Steam here. This is on my PC. And so like it has all of my, here's all the games that I own. And then Railroader is here, and I've played for, we're just gonna not show that. But you can get into the discussions here, like various discussions about, okay, here are some ideas. And I think Adam and folks are reading this and replying on a lot of them. So you can learn a lot through here. There's frequently asked questions up at the top, but that's the Steam component to this, is it kicks off the game.
Yeah, it's essentially like the commerce platform,
Right.
if you will.
So, all right. Well, I think that's all the questions. If anybody else, does anybody have anything, you can unmute yourself and ask, or you can type it in.
You talked about launching this soon. So like, I assume that Eric is like beta testing this for you. Is it available now? Anybody can download?
Yeah. Yeah, it's available right now. It's in what's called early access, which means it's kind of like a very loud way of saying like it's still being built, but
Yeah.
you can purchase it and play it. I like to say, like, I don't know, I'm probably too critical of myself or whatever. I like to say though, like it is super playable. Like there are games that are in early access that are maybe not great experiences. If I may be so bold, I think if you like this kind of game, I think this is a good experience. It's not bug ridden. So we try to do pretty well at staying on top of the bugs and keeping updates coming. So.
Yeah, and I can attest to that as well. Obviously, there's scenery, and there's things that will come, like, okay, well, the ore cars aren't full when you pick them up. Okay, whatever. I can figure that out. There are, there's not a lot of buildings, right? You kind of have to imagine that there's a coal mine or there's a ore mine here or a building here, but it's like the game has so much potential. And I mean, honestly, how many times have we've run on railroads that have less scenery than this game does? Let's be honest, right? The Plywood Pacific, that's fun to operate. This is, as I said, it's an impressive game. It's a lot of fun. And as I said, I have not done the multiplayer, but it's funny because we were just talking about, or somebody was saying, well, OPSIG ought to teach people how to dispatch. I'm like, hold on. I think I may have just found the tool here to do it, where you get 3 or 4 people who are willing to spend the astronomical sum of, I think, is it $30 for the early access?
That's right. Yeah.
That's, I know that's going to break people, but you can get 3 or 4 people with PCs, that have enough horsepower to run the game, pay the $30, and then connect in, and somebody can dispatch on a 50-mile railroad in sandbox mode. I mean, there's a lot of stuff you can do in that much distance. I mean, there's stuff you have to think about that, hold on, this train that I've just pushed out of the interchange, I did one the other day where I had 3 trains basically, all connected up as a single train moving across the railroad. That didn't get a fit in the siding, but it was a lot of fun to do. 3 engines and 72 cars. It was impressive to see. But there's a lot of situations you can set up. It's good for, people learning, okay, I've got to run around my car because this is a trailing point siding versus a leading point siding, or, all of those little moves that if you've done any operating sessions, you've figured out how to do those. Every single one of those is in here, and you've got to figure out, okay, well, there's 2 cars on the track. The spot is in the back. Okay, well, I got to pull both cars out, pull the interchange car out, push it back, and I've only got 1 track to deal with it. There's only two cars on the tail. I mean, there's so many different things you can teach with this game. And, whether it's in a Zoom, I want to demonstrate it, or, okay, if you want to play it, get the game and we'll set up a multiplayer thing for it. So I think this could be that, and like I said, we were just talking about this at our last our virtual meetup and during the annual meeting. It's like I said, we just have to figure out what we want to do with it. But I think it's it's an impressive game, an impressive simulation. So.
Yeah, Adam, I think this is terrific. Thank you guys from your team for making this, and I agree with what Eric said about the dispatching. And as a member of the timetable train order lunatic fringe, if you ever get a timetable train order dispatching, here's one vote for that. But really nice work.
I think you could. Al, I think you could actually build a timetable I was thinking about that today. I mean, you've got, if you go from one end to the other, it's 50 miles at no more than 30 miles an hour and on average. You can actually put a pretty good timetable. I mean, there's stations all the way along. I mean, I just kind of let the AI or the virtual engineer, as you suggested, I kind of let it do its thing, 5-minute station stops. And so it's constantly moving, and I'm doing freight in addition. But I think the idea of adding a timetable, I think that would be a great teaching tool. We just have to figure out, okay, it's like on any railroad, what's a reasonable amount of time to get from Ella to Whittier, right? How many miles is it? There's that map I showed earlier. You can kind of put that to it and say, okay, well, we're going to take a 10-minute station stop here, or is it 5, or is it 20, or whatever. So I think you could easily put a timetable together.
Yeah, I'm looking at
not within the game, but just on the side, right?
Right, but I'm looking at the real part of it, where instead of doing the CTC panel, you're writing, engine 1, 2, 3, run
Oh,
extra,
yeah.
blah, blah,
Yep.
blah, and actually, go in and do that. And that might be version 5.0
Right.
when you get that far. But
I think you'd have to get into something like because there's a type chat within multiplayer. I don't think there's a voice chat, correct, Adam?
That's right. Yeah.
So you'd need something like a Zoom session running alongside where you can basically simulate like picking up a phone and calling the dispatcher, at a station stop.
Well, I'm just saying,
Yeah.
if you had the dispatcher role, I mean, there's some
Yep.
model railroads where you're both the dispatcher and the operator. So you
Oh,
could
yeah.
just the idea of a crew getting an order. I mean, if you
Yep.
wanted to do
Yep.
the operator, all that, but just that would be text. I mean, it'd be cool to do the whole dictating, and then we could drive people crazy by
Yeah.
spelling out numbers and all
Oh,
of that
gosh.
stuff. But I mean, just the idea of, rather than that, it pops up and you get an order that
Yep.
says, after so-and-so arrives, take siding, blah,
Right.
blah, blah.
And like I said, once you get far enough in the game, you can put in signals too, or you can skip the signals. Like I wanted signals because I thought they were cool and I thought they'd be helpful, but I think you can kind of omit those milestones along the way, if I'm not mistaken, right, Adam?
That's right. Yeah.
So you can basically build it all dark territory and do it just like, Dave is suggesting track warrants. I think that would be great. You could do the full on Form 17s if you wanted to. You just, like I said, you just need some way to communicate other than typing it out. And I think you could do like a Zoom session on the side so you can simulate a phone. Or you can actually call, call Al and read it over the real phone. But I think there's a lot of possibilities for it as a teaching tool.
Yeah. I'm very interested in learning timetable and train order myself, and
Yeah.
so it's something that I'd love to talk with somebody who's well steeped in it to better understand, like, what is that baseline set of features that could be in the game to better
Yeah.
support that, because I think that'd be really cool.
Yep.
Adam,
All righty. Well, Adam, again, I thank you for presenting, and we've got the link in there to buy the game. Again, it is early access. There are updates coming out on a pretty regular basis with new features and so on. It's well worth, the astronomical sum of $30. So again, Adam, thanks for coming to present, and I want to thank everybody who attended.
Eric,
My